What's going on, guys? It's been a hot minute since we've talked about Sky Striker on the channel, but that's probably for good reason. Like, it's been a little bit obsolete the last few formats, and I don't know, there hasn't been much changing with the deck, but I do want to put out an updated deck profile for you, and I'm going to go through actually two versions in this video, one with Thrust and one without, because I know a lot of players are on a budget and are not picking up Thrust right now, but Thrust is just so good for Sky Striker that I feel like there's two completely different playstyles with and without it, and kind of what you want to include. And then, since you've probably already seen very similar lists before, I do want to give you guys a little bit something extra, something I've just been thinking up, like theory crafting, but that's not really set in stone just yet. But I do want to talk about what I've been thinking about for Striker and ways to innovate with it and maybe kind of change up what we can see with the deck going forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into those two different profiles. It's going to be a lot of overlap, so I'm just going to show you here's what you play with Thrust, here's what you play without, and then after that we'll go into kind of like tech stuff that I've been thinking about and see what you guys think of it. So hope you guys enjoy. Let's go ahead and jump on over. Alright fellas, let's hop into it with the main and extra, and I know you've probably seen very similar deck lists before, but hey, I want to show you my take on it, kind of confirm that what you probably have seen is good to go in my eyes. So let's go ahead and check out the main deck here, and it's just going to be like all the good Striker cards plus all the best spell cards. Like, you know, it's pretty much what Striker always is, but I want to first talk about Striker in this format overall. So Striker is in it's in an okay spot right now because it's a hand trap format, and Striker is a deck that can play 12 hand traps very seamlessly. Okay, so for that reason, like, Striker is not totally obsolete. Like, if your opponent is also playing 12 hand traps, you know, Striker plays very well against hand traps. It can trade in, like, if they hand trap every link you make, then you can just go like +3 on your turn. So for that reason, Striker is like not in a terrible spot right now, to be totally honest. So it's something you should definitely keep in mind. The hardest part is that Thrust, Triple Tactics Thrust, is very expensive, and for playing Striker at the highest level, it's very necessary, to be honest. So yeah, I'm going to show you the deck without Thrust for the more budget-oriented players, or players that just don't need Thrust right now for anything else. That includes myself. I don't own any Thrusts, but then I'll show you a list that would include Thrust and what I would kind of sub out of the no Thrust deck to put in the Thrust and the relevant cards. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the non-Thrust deck first, and it's going to be fairly standard. We're going to go ahead and show off the 3 copies of Ray, and then I'm still on 2 copies of Rose. I like 2 Rose, and especially now with better Link 2s to go into, like SP and stuff like that. Rose as an extender is just not that bad to have if you open Ray and Rose at the same time. Plus with the linkage combo, like getting Rose into the graveyard as well is going to be pretty good. And then the last Striker monster I'm going to have is Hamp. I do think it's worth playing the 1, just because it's an in-engine auto Expertly Noir, and it can just deal with random crap that you don't want to deal with. The DDD XCs in the Unchained matchup is kind of annoying. Hamp getting rid of just trading with like a Baron is pretty nice, to be honest. So it's just stuff that you want to get rid of, and it's searchable with Engage since it is a Sky Striker card. And yeah, I don't think it's bad, and we should just go ahead and play it. Okay, on to the Striker spells now. So we're going to start with 2 copies of Linkage, and I know Linkage is, you know, the hot stuff. It's the newest Sky Striker spell, but I don't think it's good enough to play at 3, to be honest. I think it's quality, but we don't need 3 of them. I think it does clog, and if you already have access to your monsters, then Linkage is just like okay. So I'm good with 2, to be honest. I'm good with having 2 for the off chance that you can pull off the OTK. But besides that, like, I don't need to be seeing this every game, so 2 is going to be fine with me. Of course, the 2 Engage, that's all we can play right now. Fingers crossed that we can get 3 of them on the next list, and then 1 Hornet Drones as well, just because it's also only at 1. For the other Sky Striker spells, I do like 2 Afterburners. I do intend to play this deck going second, which is risky business right now with all the like FTK style combo decks with Infernoble. rescue ace going around and that kind of thing. I do think 2 afterburners is still going to be good enough in a going second build. 2 copies of multi-roll. Last time I put out lists or talked about multi-roll, I was only on 1 or 0, but I'm kind of warming up to it. I do like the idea of being able to send like dead stuff to make sure that your other spells resolve. And I think 2 is the way to go. I think 3 is definitely too cloggy and not worth playing in my opinion. I'm still on 1 area 0, and I know a lot of people are cutting this card right now, and that's totally fine. Like if there's a card to cut, it's probably area 0 out of the striker engine stuff. But I still like 0 because of its combination with multi-roll, which is now at more than 1. So it's just a little bit of extra consistency to get to your Ray, and you know. Otherwise, you can just send off kind of dead things to be able to dig for your better striker cards. And then the last few are going to be our standard 3 copies of Widow Anchor, which are still fantastic and still among the best striker spells available. And then 1 copy of Shark Cannon. I don't think playing any more than 1 is necessary, especially in a going second build. A lot of times, banishing stuff out of the graveyard is not going to be that pivotal to you breaking a board, so I don't really want to see Shark Cannon in my 6 going second cards, but I do want to search it to get rid of some follow-up, for example, or it's also just good in the tier matchup. Even if you're going second against tier, just being able to Shark Cannon something, it's still good for stopping follow-up. Alright, on to the generic spells. 1 copy of Rhoda, of course, to search our Ray, and then I'm on 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. Okay, so in our build where we don't have Thrust to search the Talent, I do think Talent is worth playing, especially because hand traps are just so prevalent. Everyone's playing Ash and Valor, so I do want to have Talent, and if we get shifted, I do want to have Talent as well to look at our opponent's hand at worst, and just kind of have a little bit extra push. And then the next 3 spells are going to be 3 full copies of Forbidden Droplet. Just because of how well it interacts with all of our spell cards. Activate a striker spell, chain Droplet, sending that spell to get an extra negate out of it, non-targeting, so it does kind of get around a lot of annoying crap. So I do think Droplet, just because of its synergies, is definitely necessary to play. And then the last spell card I'm playing, the rest are hand traps after this one, but I do think it's just so good, it's worth playing, that I really like a copy of Change of Heart in this deck, especially because of SP. Just starting with a Change of Heart on to something, we can just steal it and then link it into our own SP, and that's kind of nice. It can bait out an SP, banishing. It can get rid of 2 opponents' cards essentially. If they chain SP to banish the SP and something else, and then it just helps you break a little bit of a smaller board. Plus, it just gets rid of a lot of annoying stuff. If they don't have SP, you can take a Fenrir, take a Baron, or force a Baron negate, for example. So I do think Change of Heart is quite nice. And then the last cards I'm playing are all hand traps, as is expected in a striker deck. We're going to be overloading on the hand traps here. So I'm on 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Imperm, and 3 copies of Effect Veiler. I think these are the best 4 hand traps of the format, and we're just going to play them all at 3 because that's just what Sky Striker does. Okay, so yeah, with these 12 hand traps, I'm hoping to stop my opponent from making a board that's too big to break with the rest of our engine, which is already very good at breaking boards and built to do that, okay? So this is going to be the non-Triple Tactics Thrust main deck. Now, if we do have Thrust, if you can't afford Thrust, then here they are. Here's 3 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust. These are proxies because I don't own any myself, but I do want to show what I would take out and kind of what I would replace for those thrusts, okay? So the first 2 cards I would take out here are 2 copies of Talents, because we only need 1 if they are searchable. And we don't want to overload too hard on the Triple Tactics cards, because if we just don't get hand trapped, then we have 6 cards in our deck, potentially 1 or 2 or 3 cards in our opening hand that are just totally dead, okay? So we don't want so many Triple Tactics things. I would be fine playing just the 3 thrust and the 1 talent here. The next card I would cut is going to be the Area 0, just because of that extra consistency that thrust already provides. Thrust can just search the engage. We don't need Area 0 to dig for stuff. So yeah, those 3 are going to be coming out for thrust. And then we can also cut some things for thrust targets maybe. So the thrust targets that I would probably want to play are Harpy's Feather Duster, and maybe one like Raigeki even. Like one of each. I don't think Lightning Storm is going to be good, even though it does cover both of those, because a lot of times you have to summon stuff to bait out an interruption for thrust to become live. And if we have if we go like Kagari effect and they use Valor, well then yeah, our thrust is live, but we can't search Lightning Storm, right? So I don't think I would play the Lightning Storm. I would probably cut in Afterburners and maybe one copy of one Hand Trap here, like a Valor or something. I think that would be acceptable, and then we would put in one copy of Duster and Raigeki. So I would sub out these 5 cards for 3 thrust, 1 Duster, and 1 Raigeki, just for a little bit of flexibility in breaking boards and stuff like that. Okay, so these are the 2 versions of the Sky Striker main deck that I would play for standard. Now I'm going to go through the extra deck, and then after the extra deck I'm going to go through a little bit of theory crafting that I've come up with, but is not complete yet. So, but I do want to show you guys, just because you decided to stick around and watch a Sky Striker profile, that you've probably already seen similar lists before. For example, I want to shout out Time Thief on YouTube. He just topped a side event at the last YCS, I believe, and won with Sky Striker, and he had a really quality list. So I would recommend going to check out Time Thief's channel. I'll link that in the description below. But besides that, yeah, we're going to go into the extra deck, which is a little bit different from last time because there are new cards out since I last did a Sky Striker profile. It's going to start off the same. 3 Kagari, you gotta do it, of course. And then we're gonna go into 3 copies of Shizuku. And we're gonna lean kind of hard into the Sky Striker extra deck monster names because of linkage, which locks you into those Sky Striker names. 2 Hayate, I think, is standard at this point. And then 1 Kaina. We're gonna go with 1 Zeke and 1 Azalea. Okay, so Azalea is the newest Sky Striker Link monster. And I am playing it just for flexibility of things that we can do while staying within the Sky Striker Ace name. You know, if you don't have Azalea, I know it's a little bit expensive relatively, and it's not very common to find, I've realized. So if you don't have Azalea, I would just play a second Zeke instead, and that's going to be totally fine. It's a little bit less flexible, but it still does the trick. And then the last 4 cards. So the biggest hitter is going to be our SP Little Knight. I know that it's expensive, and if you don't have it, that's going to be fine. I'll show you what you can play instead afterwards. The second card is going to be a Typhon. Again, another relatively expensive card, not as much as SP, but definitely a really nice addition to the Sky Striker extra deck, just because you can go into it with anything, including a stolen monster with Widow Anchor, or a revived monster with Shark Cannon, or just kind of a dead Striker Link if that happens to be the case for some reason. It outs annoying things that you can't usually out with your engine, like Dragoon. If someone makes Dragoon against you for some reason, you can go into Sky Crisis in the extra monster zone, so you're still not locking yourself out of using your Striker spells, and just out that problem card. And even just ending on this sometimes, to rely on its effect where your opponent can't use anything 3000 or higher, is kind of nice. It's like a little floodgate you can keep in your extra monster zone and still have the rest of your non-engine to interrupt. I think this is a fantastic card, and I would definitely pick this up if you're trying to play Striker. And then the last 2 cards in the extra deck are going to be 2 Charmer cards, and the reason for these are that well, I went with Dark and Fire because I think these are the most prevalent attributes right now. A lot of decks play Dark, or if a lot of decks play fire stuff, including Ash Blossom. And then we have Rescue Ace, we have Infernoble stuff and things like that. And the reason that the Charmers are so good is that you can take 2 cards, put them and make them into a Charmer. A Charmer revives back something that your opponent has, and then you have an extra deck monster to use as material for SP Little Knight. Okay, so these all synergize really well going into SP and kind of using the best of your extra deck's abilities. Now, if you don't have SP, that's okay. What I would recommend is replacing it with either another Charmer. We can go into Asa, or we can go into the Wind Charmer. And the reasons I like the Earth and the Wind is because we can revive common stuff like Fenrir with Asa and just have a Fenrir on our board. Or if we can out our opponent's Baronne de Fleur, we can, or like steal it with Widow Anchor. Say we bait their negate and we steal it with Widow Anchor, we can link it off into a win, revive that Baron to our own field, and then just have a Baron on our field ready to go with the effect still live for negate. Okay, so it's just some nice options. I have always liked the Charmers in the Striker structure deck, Striker extra deck, because we just get extra utility out of it. Our whole deck is utility, honestly. So because of that, we can keep further that theme and just be able to bring back whatever our opponent has and use it against them, preferably. Okay, so that's going to be it for our Striker extra deck. Now let me just talk to you for a minute about things that I've been theory crafting about the future of Striker and things that we can maybe change up. We've been playing Striker the same for, I don't know how many years, 5 years now. So what if we change it up a little bit? What if, and this is just, I'm relying on a little bit of spitballing here, but what if Ray is no longer the best normal summon? What if there's this card in Age of Overlord that came out that might be a better normal summon in the deck than Ray right now? But we can still use Ray, of course. But I'm thinking Gen and Ken. And the reason is that the triple tactics cards are just so good in Striker that I want to be able to utilize them to the max of our ability. And not everyone's going to be hand trapping us. So what if we played Gen and Ken to facilitate our triple tactics thrust and triple tactics talent combos in order to search engage better. Plus, we get a draw to discard 1 and make our thrust live, make our talents live. And if we go Gen and Ken, we can still get into our Striker engine if we have one of our triple tactics cards. Okay, so we can go thrust to get talents or to get a change of heart. We can take the Ken right back to our field, and then we can link those off into an Azalea because it just takes 2 lighter dark monsters, and Ken and Gen are both light. Okay, so we can go into Azalea and then immediately link that off for a copy of Shizuku, and then hopefully we can get a Ray in our grave somehow. Maybe we drew Gen and Ray at the same time, and then if we do that, then we can use Ken to discard our Ray from our hand, and essentially, with the draw to discard 1, and essentially we have Shizuku on board in the end of all this. We have Shizuku on board with Ray in the grave. What's the difference if we didn't just summon Ray and go into Shizuku? Well, we drew 2 cards with Ken. Okay, so we just kind of facilitated our engine a little bit better. We've changed it up a bit to make room for Gen and Ken. We can cut 1 rose at least, and then figure out what else we want to cut if we want to lean a little bit heavier into the triple tactics package. All right, so it's just an idea. I do understand that Gen in our main monster zone turns us off of our spell traps, but that's why we're going to play in an Almirage to get it out of there. In worst case, if our Gen gets impermed, well, then we just link it off into Almirage and hope to play through with our hand traps in the rest of our non-engine. Really, it's the same as if we had Shizuku on board that got impermed, honestly. So, we're kind of in the same boat there, except we just have a little bit of a higher ceiling going first with Gen and Ken rather than Ray into Shizuku pass. Okay, so it's just an idea. Oh, that brings up another point. You can also just side deck these for going first because they are kind of bad going second. Much worse than Ray going second. So You could sideboard into Gen and Ken, but it's just an idea to think about. All right, so let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. And with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a member. Details are in the description below about what you get if you become a member. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next one. We'll see you soon.